Welcome to episode 1. He is Lais, and I am the coach, and that is the name of our show.
Everything stems from our identity.
You can still take a chance and take a risk, right?
What is the level of intention and attention that you are putting forth?
To us, success is being able to live life on our terms.
You're either going to take care of your health by choice or by obligation. So make it a choice now.
But it's about the experience.
If you're part of the living, you're going to have life.
What if it is better than you even thought?
We all have that limitless potential.
The fear that steps into most people paralyzes them.
I don't think anyone's ever said any of the shit you just said, which is amazing.
There's a lot of parts of you that you should let go of.
You have time for all of that. You have time for this too.
Guys, we are back.
We're back, bitches!
Welcome, everybody, to Lais and the Coach. Welcome, everybody, to Lais and the Coach. And on this special Friday episode, we have a returning guest, Brian from Fitness Atlantic. Welcome back to the show.
Yes. We're excited to have you again.
Thanks.
So last time we spoke, we were in the middle of our Airbnb adventure for all the listeners and people watching. And our signal was bad. The visual wasn't great. Like we tried to make this happen. But the reason that we tried to make it happen so bad is that had also been the first time that we went to Fitness Atlantic. And we came back so like, wow, this was so cool that we just really, really wanted to chat with you. And since then, we've gone back a couple times. And now going to Fitness Atlantic is part of our annual plan. Like when we start making plans for what our year looks like, going to Mohegan Sun, going to Fitness Atlantic is on the docket for so many reasons, not just to show. So my first question is, how many people do you think, or just in general, how many people are missing that weekend at Mohegan Sun because they're just seeing some of the show stuff and not realizing that the weekend itself can be a big getaway or kick off to the spring or even the competitive season?
Well, that's a good question because I would make me wonder too, how many people are missing out. It really always gets related to how many people are referred to the show or how many people have a coach that likes the show that tells people about the show. I don't know how many people actually might find me on Instagram and go, I think I want to enter this without knowing a little bit more information about it. So, but in the old days, I used to have a better answer for you because in the old days, before the internet, when I would drive around with posters and go to gyms and hang them up, people would call my house and get a voicemail machine. It had multiple options. So it would say, if you're interested in entry, press number 1. If you're interested in, a ticket, press number 2. So from there, I would have a notepad and I would write down, and I even had an option on this answering machine to slow it down, to listen really carefully, to get their address and mail them a packet that would have it. So like Donna, my wife, would always laugh because she'd see this large book I would have with all the names written down. And this is before the internet, it's before email and just checking back in with people. I'd have to call them up. This is before texting.
Wow.
Anybody. So, then I would see that I would probably get about 300 inquiries, and about half or less than half the people would actually make it all the way to the show. So it's hard now because you posting every day, you're trying to see if you're getting likes on Instagram. It's hard to tell. So as things evolved, eventually I did a PDF report that people would download called the pre-show report. So I could tell by that list of how many people opted into that list of how many inquiries I was sort of getting that way. And once they opted into my email list, I would sit down each day and write. It was in an autoresponder, so it was like it was going out to the masses, but it came
Right.
across like I was individually writing people. It didn't look so much like a newsletter. It looked like an email that came directly from me that would answer a lot of questions or tell stories that were about the struggles of why people back out of these events.
Okay.
So I still do it. It just doesn't work as well as it did when email open rates were much higher. So, but I'd still have that as part of my website, and I have a pre-show report that people download. But it was at the now there's people on that list. So each year I might not get as many subscribes to that list as I did pretty much in like 2010, 11 ish time when that was kind of a new thing. So people talk about like marketing, people talk about funnels, and it's like, oh, okay, I was doing that back then. Like getting people to opt into the email, give them a PDF report, had all the information on it, and then writing them every day to keep them motivated to do it. But a big success of the pre-show report back then, especially that year, because like really 2015 was just it all just everything just kind of hit the right way. It was just that I had so many coaches throughout New England that had these teams, and they were part of the pre-show report too, with their different posing workshop dates of where they can go. So you had, me doing Connecticut, but then you had, Nicole was in Rhode Island. Then we had Janelle was in Massachusetts, and then Melina was in New York. And I would make appearances at these certain, like as they grew towards the end of their workshops, then I would make like an appearance and talk to people about it. And the last group really participating like that now is in New Jersey. So we have the Kickbox and CKO, that part of it too. So it's finding those coaches is the biggest key, because it's not all me. It's
Well, I have two different, and then you could say what you want. Like I have two different perspectives on it, because like I look at it as a coach, obviously first, and then I also look at it as kind of like a participant, because I bring like Lais competes, Brianna competes, like so I'm looking at it from different angles, and I can tell you from my perspective, there's a couple things that I look at when we're looking at the season for the people competing. One is like, which venue do you want to go to, right? Because it's not just the time of the year. It's also like if we're talking about this in November, then you also want to pick the shows that you enjoy, right? Like which one of these venues is most appealing for that weekend. That is something that we certainly consider when we're talking to our clients. Number one. Number two, I also look at which shows are we going to go to. We try to go to every single show, but we don't always make it to all of them. But which ones are shows that we can't miss? And I can tell you, even our son has already said, like, we're going to Mohegan Sun, right?
That's
like,
his favorite.
it's like,
That's my favorite.
and honestly, it sounds funny, but at the same time, it does weigh, because as we're planning that as a family, and a lot of these competitors have families, then it is something that we think they should factor in. It's like, you can go to any other venue and it not necessarily feel like a getaway or a family friendly environment, as opposed to you can go stay there. Everything is at Mohegan Sun. You don't need to leave the facility. It's all encompassing. There's plenty to eat, plenty to do, and it's safe and secure, so you don't have to worry about that part. That weighs a lot for us as we are picking shows.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously I have the coaching perspective too, just like you, but I also have the competitor perspective. And for me, it's like, I think too often everyone misses the fact that this is supposed to be an experience, right? It's like everyone gets laser focused on the competition and the stage moment, and all of that is great, but it is an experience. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of money to get to this place, and for it to just last whatever showtime is, like, really doesn't make any sense. And we tell everybody that we coach that all the time. This is a whole weekend experience. And the thing about this show specifically is that it's exactly that. Like, you step into the Mohegan Sun and it feels like you're on a cruise ship, right? You have so many options of coffee and food and donuts and entertainment. And it's just like, it's almost like you're in this bubble, and it's beautiful and it's safe. And everybody, there's something for everybody. You can shop, you can buy makeup. There's like a Sephora or an Ulta, like one of those. I'm just like, what the heck? This is perfect. There's nothing better, right? If you want to do pictures, there's plenty of places around. Obviously, the stage and the theater are beautiful, but it is the full experience. This isn't just like, all right, I got to step on stage and I'm going to compete against these handful of people and let's see what happens. It's like, that's such a disservice to what this is, especially in the WBFF, where it is about the glam and the fashion and the glitz. And so your show, this show is certainly like hits all the spots.
I also think that there is still, this day and age, a little bit of a disconnection between the bodybuilding that's done in a high school auditorium or in a cafeteria versus a show like this. I think a lot of times, even still to the day, people are like, oh, it's just, like a bodybuilding show. And it's not.
Right.
And I think that disconnection doesn't allow a lot of audience participation. And it also doesn't allow more participation from people stepping on stage because they are comparing it to something that it isn't.
Yeah, it was for me, it was like a dream to be able to have a show at Mohegan Sun because, when I was in high school, pretty much is when Mohegan was built. So, in Connecticut, you have the two casinos. So you have Mohegan and you have Foxwoods. And either one of them, I would have had my show there. And it took an evolution of building it up where, for a while there, I started off at downtown New Haven at a Palace Theater. When you're in these old theaters, a lot of times the dressing rooms are so small because they have plays and stuff. When you crawl downstairs, you're like, man, I can't fit 100, 150 people, contestants down here. So that was always a struggle there. And then, we ended up moving it for 10 years to a high school in East Haven, and for me, that was because the Palace had closed. And I remember like the guy who I rented the Palace from was like, you belong in a high school. That's where you're going to make the most money. You shouldn't be spending this kind of money on big theaters like this. It doesn't make any sense. This is what your people do. And I'm like, I never wanted that, and you always want to evolve and make things better for people. And, then we booked the Oakdale Theater, which is a beautiful place. And I still go to see a lot of concerts. It's in an odd spot. So you're at, the hotel is 2 exits away. So you're like you have to have a car, drive 2 exits away, get in this regular old hotel, and then drive back the next day, to go to the theater. But what happened there is, I was there for 4 years, and it's a great theater. It has a big lobby, and we started doing those Shaun T workouts in the front lobby, and that's what really opened the doors to get to Mohegan, because we were pulling in we had to do small workout groups because the dome is like 22,000 square feet, but Mohegan's ballroom is it's 40,000 square feet. So we had 1,200 people doing workouts. So we would run this WBFF Fitness Atlantic show on Saturday, and then take all the chairs out, and then have a big workout on Sunday morning, which was was super cool. Cool. But eventually, everything changes, and we did that for 3 years at Mohegan, and then we were still in the ballroom area, but we were building a stage. But it's flat seating because you just have, it's a ballroom, so you're building a stage and you're putting chairs out. But they have to rig the lights and make this whole big ordeal. So, after COVID's when we came back, and then we looked at the other option, moving into the cabaret and splitting the show over 2 days and taking transformation and having it on its own day. But it's always better to have like tiered seating and, that nice feel of being there with a permanent stage and having something like that. But, you don't always find that in casino areas. So, it's finding the right venue that's going to work. Like I said, there is a dressing room area for the cabaret. So, but you really can't fit more than like 75 people there. So to GM the whole show on one day is nice, but then it's too small down there. So it kind of make that schedule work. But I tell people, I like going up to Mohegan and just walking around. And I'm not a gambler, but that's not the thing about it. But it's just, there's so much to do and look at and see. and then you add all that production on top of it with the way we do the lights and to the beats of the music with pre-programmed songs, and it just takes it up that much more professional of especially when you start off and you start as a promoter who's been doing shows in high school auditoriums, and you're working your way up over time to build this. It's, for people that don't know, they might think, oh, like these shows are they just make that kind of money where you can go in and do this giant production, of $100,000 production with venue and all these things, but they don't know that it took 25-30 years to get to that point of being able to do that.
It's definitely a production, that's for sure.
And even to your point, like the 25 years, my next question is kind of related to that, but you were talking about some of the workouts that you would host, right? Like you've been around the fitness world for a really long time. And one of the things that I notice is back in the day, if Sean T was hosting a workout, people would show. If Johnny G was teaching a spin class, people would go. If Tony Horton was going to do people would go. Right. These days, it is whichever brand and their ambassadors, and it's just to take pictures. No one's going to work out. Even specifically in our fitness world, it is now more about, I will make a line for 3 hours so that I could stand with an influencer so that we could take a picture. And if that influencer was delivering a workout, you wouldn't go to it, right? Like something about.
Well, yes, no, I would say that I think Spartan Race has fell off a little bit, and from what I could tell, just from not seeing as much marketing of it, but High Rocks is still like this new hot thing. It's just blown up. I went to the New York City one last year, and I don't know if there was 50,000 people over a period of time. Yeah, and then we went, with Paul, I went to the Olympia the last 2 years, and we just walk around and go to the expo and see. So yeah, that has really changed to me, because the last big expo I went to was probably 2001 to the Arnold Classic. And there was one year I just went to the Arnold Expo. Another year I went, and we went through the contest as well, which was like in a different venue that you had to go to see the bodybuilding contest. Yeah, expos to me aren't really fun. I don't really like walking around through a bunch of crowd and just going table to table and seeing all that stuff. But that was a trend for a while. It was, these shows were turned into expo shows. So you'd have a stage in the far corner, and then a whole bunch of sports nutrition booths all around, and people handing out samples. But when, back 2001, when I'd go, a lot of the girls from the Fitness Atlantic, and, they're on the cover of Oxygen. So they would go and work these booths. So I'd walk around and see a lot of people, and everything was bright and colorful. And you have all the magazines that were out back then. It was all about covers magazines. Everyone wanted to be on a magazine cover. And now it's hard to even find any magazines. When you go to a newsstand, you really don't see any of them. But that was the main thing, was not just winning a show, but can I get on a cover of a magazine, was even, I'd say, maybe even higher of importance of a level, because you could not win a show but still make a cover of a magazine, and it was just as good. So you were just like, that was just kind of the top of what to do. But going to the Olympia the last 2 years, I just think COVID really just changed everything. And now I go, and it's like everything's like sort of catering to this younger demographic of influencers. Most of the booths were not as colorful. They're very black. So it's, and people just, a younger crowd, they walk around and, they got their hoodies on, and it's different. I really didn't see many fitness models, girls, that I would see in the past. It seemed very like, male dominated, and just, a younger crowd of what I'd see, years back before that. But it's always fun hanging out with Paul, because we're always with all the 90s bodybuilders come along. Right. And that was like the thing I followed, because back then when I was into it, I'd go to the Night of Champions New York, and you'd have 15 bodybuilders on stage, and you knew every single one of their names because you read the magazines that told you about them. And now it's very different to me, because I'd go to a show like that, and there's hundreds of competitors that you don't know, and they all look the same. And it's just, it's very different from on the bodybuilding side of what I followed back
Yeah,
then.
and I guess to your point, the thing now is like, because there isn't that magazine cover to aspire to, right? Then what is the thing that people are aspiring to is one, and two, even when you go to the shows, it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of guys walking around, but women are still dominating participation because the bikini and fit model categories are always packed in every show. So none of the traditional fitness booths and I guess all the stuff that happens during the morning part of a bodybuilding show is happening at Fitness Atlantic. Fitness Atlantic is a completely different animal, right? It's like that whole weekend isn't about like who's sponsoring the show and what's like what bars are new and what pre-workout they're giving away. It's only about the show, so everybody that's participating kind of gets to focus on that without the distractions, which I think we appreciate, like
100%.
without having the distractions of an expo.
Well, yes. I mean, it's completely because I still get mixed in the category of bodybuilding and fitness. But when people think about going to the Arnold or going to, the Olympia, walking around an expo and then maybe going to watch a show where it's more mandatory posing, this is not it at all of what you're seeing when you come to anything WBFF or Fitness Atlantic. You're, even with the transformation day, so I want to say it's all contest, but the transformation day on Friday, you're sitting through and it's more of a show. It's definitely more of a show. It's a production. There's not a lot of stops or empty stage time. It's contestants are picking their own music that they just play for 60 seconds and do a routine. It's definitely from start to finish. It's all planned out, and the lighting and all that stuff. And it's about just making these contestants really feel special. But it's in a whole different category of
I'm happy you
anything.
brought that up because that's actually one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the transformation category, because we have always loved that category from day one. It's to us like one of the biggest things that WBFF has to offer, right? Aside from the glitz and the glam and the modeling, like the fact that there's a transformation showcase where someone can showcase their story, where they like what they've been through, where they come from, their starting point, and have a platform and have a moment to really celebrate that is incredible and not really anywhere else in this way. And your show specifically is probably the best one for that category for the reasons that you're saying. You have a full night dedicated to it. There are so many transformation contestants. And as a matter of fact, after we did our last podcast, one of the girls on our team that we coach, we've been coaching her for a while, and she was kind of on the fence about the stage, but she's like, if I do it, I'm going to do transformation, because she's already gone through a big transformation, but was still in that process. And listening to you talk about the transformation category and what you do and what it represents and how much you care about it is the thing that like tipped it over the edge for her and made her do the show. She's like, if I do a show, it's that one, and it's transformation, right? Because it is so unique, and it allows women the opportunity to not only work hard towards something and do, set a big goal and go and do that, but to do it in a way where you don't have to worry about who's standing next to you. It takes away, like you said, it's not that it's not a competition, but it takes away the thing about the competition that's like heavy a lot of times, So I'd love to hear a little bit of how that came about for you in terms of it even being as big as it is for your show and the big focus that you put on it for your weekend, for your show.
Well, especially once I started doing the WBFF and we did the large screen in the background, right away I said to Paul, like, this would be really good to have a before picture in the background and walk out as the after. And, being someone that promoted, before that I did natural bodybuilding shows, and that's what I promoted. So, and it was, just the thing about trying to encourage people to enter shows and not be discouraged. So many people enter and are discouraged, and the whole competition part of it, because so many people are trying to get a body of their dreams, but then it's like they really don't have a goal to get to the body of their dreams. So it's like they stop along the way. I go like, for what? So it's like when you have the stage and the date, then you could work your way towards trying to get this body that you've imagined, or the different people that have been physique, models and in the magazines and people that you aspire to look at. But then you walk away because you get third placed and you're just disgusted. Never made any sense to me, because I'd be like, I'd still be happy with third place. Like I've never won a show and I competed. So it was like I was the second place, third place, fifth place in a bigger show. Each show was larger, but I was just placing where I would place. But I never walked away disgusted, because I know, okay, well, listen, it's just a matter of who shows up on that day. So you never know who's going to show up, and you could keep jumping in from show to show and see how you do, but it's all a matter of who's on that stage that day. I remember the last time I did one was in 98, and one of the guys judging saw me 4 weeks earlier and was like, man, what'd you do to yourself? I just took a lot of bad advice from a lot of people. It's like, what are you gonna do? I don't know. I just, but it was still, I was just ecstatic that I made fifth place, because I walked away with a trophy, and it didn't even matter to me, because at that last show I did, it was just a really large show with a big stage. So I'm like, if I walk away with stage photos on this, I'm just going to take this and apply it to what I'm doing in the future. But it's going to look way better than all the previous shows I've ever done that were at high schools with just a banner in the background. So it was just, I was happy enough with that, but I would have been happy enough just to be on the stage and have a picture on the stage. So, because I knew I was going to use that in the personal training, and at that time I was going to run that same show in Connecticut. So I was out in California. It was the Fitness Miracle Muscle Mania, and then I came back to Connecticut and I ran one and tried to promote it in that same way. And even at I had a brochure that went out in the mail to people. It was a 3-fold brochure, and it just showed, that stage, and it was a picture of me in the thing. And I remember one guy looking at it going to another contestant, like at a different show, because I would go around and hand them out. He'd be like, you could beat this guy. And I'll go, yeah, that's me. You could beat me. It doesn't matter. It was just, but taking my event to that kind of level of production is what I was trying to do, is just even back then, many years ago. But, yeah, for a lot of people that understand that, hey, you're going to get a major production, and I've always been told by other people, none of that matters. Nobody cares. They don't care that you have lights. They don't care that the music goes to the lights. They don't care that it's at Mohegan Sun. They only care if they win. And there may be a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of people in this business that feel that way. Like they just want to brag about their titles of what they won, and they will just keep jumping from show to show. And we know the more shows you do and the more you go to, that certain shows are easier to win. That less people are going to be at different events. So I would know that people trying to get their, a pro card would jump from one show to the next show to the next show to the next show. And, I'd be like, to me, I'd wonder why they wouldn't just wait a year and come back, especially if they're from where I am. If you're in New England, why are you going to drive out and fly somewhere to go try to win something? But, I'd get people to tell me, well, that's because you're not thinking like a competitor. I'm like, well, I kind of always did. I'd still want to be on a big grand stage and do that. But, there's always been that times, there was many years that we had Rodney from Status Fitness magazine come to the show, and he'd bring his magazines and pass them out to all the people. And they would always like do a little blurb on some contestants, but he'd wait a whole year before that magazine came out. So if he came in April, it was like a January or February issue that he would bring and pass out to everybody so that they could see, hey, listen, maybe you can make the magazine and be in here instead, so you try to do different things that build it up too, that make it not just about the winners, because there's always just going to be a handful of winners. So all the other people should not walk away upset or, just think in too much of a competitor mindset. If people could open up their mind to be more open to the whole full experience. And that really comes to the right coaches, because if the coaches can just explain that, and I had some huge teams that were coming to this show really before COVID, and then COVID hit and they all moved away, and it was kind of threw me off a little bit. But if you get the right coaches that understand the show and speak to people as a way of, hey, this is an experience we do together as a team, and we reach goals and we work harder to every year get better, and don't worry about this year, we have 12 more months, we'll do it again next year, and not just make it a once and done type of thing, because anybody can get on a stage with a black curtain behind them in a spotlight and just stand there and try to beat a couple people. But when the whole thing comes together and you're with part of a group of people that have fun, then it's nice. I mean, there's been other years I've seen like a group will come for transformation, like the CKO team, and then I will, moving around in the casino, and you're walking around, and I walk by that club, one of the Avalon or one of those things, and I saw them all dancing together, like as a team, and I was like, all right, they're gonna walk away with a lot of memories right there, and that's not even the show. They walked into the nightclub lounge, Club Vista. It was the Vista Lounge, and I saw them because you could see them when you're walking by, and I'm like, now they're going to have things to talk about.
I think that's the thing. It's like to your point, one of the things that we've always said about the stage is that there's not another goal that'll make you do that, right? That's going to get you in that kind of shape. The goal itself demands it. But I think that people get stuck in the, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to try to win part, right? It's like you can't control that part, because when you leave on Monday, when you get home, that body's still yours, or at least should be, right? And that's the real win. But without the stage component, you would have never even transformed like that. And I think inside of all of it, that's getting lost more and more, because you're not walking away with the win, and you're focusing on the trophy instead of focusing on the real win, which is your transformation. Whether you're doing transformation category or bikini or wellness, doesn't make a difference. You walk away with this new body that you get to walk in, and you wouldn't have done that without the show. And if you're going to do a show, why not do a show like this one that is so well run, so well put together, to music and lights and all the things, so that you can have an overall experience, right? And I think along the way, whether it's the coaches or sometimes people get like laser, I don't want to say narrow-minded, laser focused, right? Well, for example, with High Rocks, right? You don't know who you're running against. Right. All you know is that it's 8 events and running, and you're going to do your best. And if you came in last, you still did it, right?
Yeah, but you know what I think is interesting about that is that with the competition world, with bodybuilding, with modeling, with what we do, unlike a race where there's a number attached and you can be like, okay, I ran this fast and this person ran that fast, so it's math. Everybody takes it so personal. Like it's almost like, even if you don't know the judges or anything like that, it's a shot to your ego or to your self-worth sometimes that somebody didn't think, based on their perception and their taste and their idea of what they want, right? That it wasn't good enough, or that somebody else was better. Because very rarely is there a way, like obviously, like we know what we're doing. So when we're judging a show, we can say, well, this and that, and like there are tangible things that make someone stand out more than somebody else. But I think a lot of times people get so focused on making sure that they're recognized for that it does take away from their experience. But I think it's because it's not as obvious to the average person why someone got it versus them. I do think that people take that like as a shot to them personally.
Well, right. I think that's a great example too. You said High Rocks, and it's like I was there, I watched people, right? And it's like, I don't know how many people do it over and over again, but I think if you complete it, you probably feel good about yourself. But I just think a lot of it is what people have to tell their friends and family the next day. And I've always said that at our athlete meetings, I'm always trying to tell people, like, don't set yourself up for failure. If you placed third and the next day you go and somebody wasn't at the event and they say, how'd you do? And you say, I got third. they're going to respond to you that you should have did better. They weren't looking at you. You know, there's all this feedback that they give you, and it's just they're trying to make you feel good, but it's just kind of like taken away from everything. So even back in the day when I ran the Mr. Connecticut show, I would have trophies and I'd put picture frames into the trophies so that people can say, because when you brought the trophy to your gym the next day and put it on the counter and said what you did, nobody still really understood where you came from and what you looked like on stage that day. So it would happen to me personally, you know, people would ask me how I did, you know, and I would be like, well, I got second, or I got third, or I got fifth. And it all means nothing. That means
You say it all
absolutely
the
nothing.
time. You're like, you still got to go to work tomorrow and do
Yeah.
whatever it is you do.
But they don't even know how far you came. So that's why I even mean it means nothing even to that, because
Yeah.
Right.
like, so for some people, it was a little weird, but back then, you know, we didn't have our phones where you go, oh, look, you know, but it'd be like, hey, if I did have a picture, I'd be like, this is what I look like on stage. And they're like, oh my God, like, really? Like, just below it, the placing didn't matter when they had no idea what I looked like on stage until I showed them a picture and be like, this is what I look like.
Mm-hmm.
And they were blown away. So it just completely changes that narrative and the story about second, third, fourth. People get hung up on it. There's people that have done my show that follow them on social, and then I see that they're doing a smaller high school show or something like that. They really want that win, no matter where it is, so they can
Mhm.
check that box and be like, "Hey, I did this." Yeah, but you know, like, yeah, I don't know. I think there still are some people that run a high rocks race that get upset because I saw, like, when I went to New York, right? It rained in New York and the turf was like not good, so they couldn't push these sleds the same as other. And you know, I could see comments on that, and I was like, wow, you know, I thought it was amazing. I thought like the whole thing looked. I was impressed, especially when I see how many people participated and
We
things
went
like
to
that.
the very first one ever in the US. It was
Yeah.
in Miami, like how many years ago at this point? Like
Before COVID.
before COVID. We went to it. We were so impressed. He was one of the refs. And we were so impressed too, because it was like, wow, what an operation.
But
Yeah.
yes, there is negative feedback in all situations. But you know, you've been to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think it's on the second or third night. He says, you know, you're going to go back home, and people are not going to understand what you just did, and they're going to accuse you of joining a cult or
Drinking the
doing
Kool-Aid.
or whatever. And I think that it translates, because you go back home, you go to work, and if you've been posting, right, if you decided that you wanted to document your journey,
Yeah.
I think 9 out of 10 times people have seen the transformation, and they're just kind of rooting for you, the fact that you made it all the way.
Right.
But to the ones that never see it, they're like, oh, how'd that fitness thing go? It's like, to your point, they never see what you look like. So they never see, like, wow, like, you made that happen. And the reason that that matters, and we were talking about this morning, that's why I'm looking at her, is because you go get a shot or you get surgery and you get celebrated.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. But somebody who worked for 16 weeks or 2 years on a transformation, depending on their placing, they get criticized. That makes no sense.
Yeah, and the people that are criticizing them are only doing what they think is right. You know, they're only telling them, hey, oh, next time you'll do better, you know, or even the ones that go and watch the show and they know the person was supposed to be third. It's like, it's clearly you were third. But there's always people I want to talk about how it's subjective. And they're like, well, it's so subjective. I'm like, it's not. It's actually not. It is 100% correct. You placed exactly third. But I never walked. I did shows, you know, and I entered them, and I felt the same way. And especially my first show, and I tell this story to sometimes to people because I was prepping for a show, and my younger brother decided to do the same show. So it was both our first show, and you know, I'm in the open men category, and I'm 20, just turning 21, and he's 2 years younger than me, but he's in the teenage category. So we only had to compete against one guy. I had to compete against eight men who are like 35, 40. So when people would say like, "Hey, how'd you guys do in the show?" Well, Richie won and I got second. Oh, well, did he beat you? I'm like, no. They have like, so they don't
Right.
understand
People don't
what it
understand.
is at all, right? And then I'd have to show a picture. Now I'm a weirdo. Walk around with a picture because it's like
Just
1991. And it's like, what
Prove
did you
it.
show your picture for? Like,
no, I
so
agree.
so I was just, it's too bad because, and that's the other thing. If somebody preps for a show and they go for so long, and my show's always been known as like, I've always focused on first time people doing my show. That's why I really like transformation. I was also a huge fan of Body for Life when that was in existence and it was a thing. I thought it was just wonderful for what it was. And I knew a lot of people used to enter the Body for Life competition. So, that was all about transformation. I kept Bill Phillips' books. I kept the marketing materials. I just thought that was genius of what it was back then. And so it's always been about before and after and seeing where you started and where you came from. And that most people aren't going to make significant, huge changes within the year. So, especially once, building muscle and getting that lean, how's your body going to change that much in within a year? So for people that do 3 shows back to back to back, it's really hard for me to understand because I'm like, okay, you're chasing something. I get it. And this is, if you want to call it a sport and you want to go for it in that way and you really want to win a pro card to move on. But even when they like win a pro card, it's like, okay, now are you going to go in the pro competition and are you going to do it year over year over year? And it's nice when you can go from year to year and see a huge significant change. It's just hard to make those changes really fast. So that's why I always like when people, especially if you live in New England and you're skipping my show to go to other places or to do different shows that are, I would think smaller or different, or even if they get more competitors, but they're not at that production standard. Um, it's just hard for me to understand when that amount of like effort I give into all those things and all the details about it. And it's just being on a different, just thinking about it in a different way. And that's why I try to get people to understand like transformation is a huge starting point for a lot of people that'll do transformation. Then eventually the next year they'll come back and go in the open category after 12 months of learning more about what to do. And what transformation is also weird because a lot of times people won't come back and do it the next year, even though they're making more and more changes year over year. They just think it's a one and done thing sometimes. And I would encourage that it shouldn't be, that they should come back and try to see what kind of changes they made from the year before that without having to go into an open category and making it more of a contest and walking away feeling any kind of disappointment. And that they should never feel, and so it's about changing yourself, and learning. But some people, even they're getting on stage is so hard because even learning this posing and getting on stage, you need time with confidence. You should, if you walk in and get lucky and you win your pro card on your very first show, you still don't have that years of stage time, so sometimes there's girls that come in that had modeling backgrounds and they came from pageant industries and they have years and years of that confidence of walking on stage and they just dominate. They're just
Yeah, and we've seen it. Somebody comes from a different federation, a different
And
organization,
their
like,
body is like,
and that's always hard to control. And I agree. We've had plenty of people do transformation multiple times, right? It's like because you're still transforming. But I did want to ask, like you said something earlier about the coaches, like and the influence that coaches have on the shows. Like, how do you think coaches could help promote the shows better? How do you think the coaches can work with the promoters more to kind of like bring more people or whatever it is that the coaches can do to help either move the show forward or make the shows better?
well they it's sad. I get sad when I see like different clients jump from team to team to team. Like I always in my mind, I still visualize them with the first coach I met them with. So I'm like, you came from so and so, don't you? And they're like, well, yeah, that's where I used to be with, and I always like to see that they stay and they keep developing with the same people instead of thinking that someone else might have different information for them or their team has more influence with the federation. So they need to be with a certain team that is more tied in. Like there's a lot of just reasons that I like to see the teams grow with certain people. You know, there's one coach in Connecticut now that has done phenomenal this year with her team, and it just really blew up. So, and it's, you know, I've seen it come from a smaller group, you know, and I've seen like it's that camaraderie you build within though. It's about, again, just like you're saying about the event being part of what they're all doing together and supporting each other, where it's not an individual. I always find it odd when there's like one coach with one client, because if you train one client and especially when they say I'm bringing my person to win, like you have one person. I understand, like it's nice, thank you. You're bringing one person to the show, but your likelihood of that person winning, you know, it's just the odds and numbers. I don't know who's going to show up, and neither do they. So it's like,
Right.
okay, like there's a good chance you're going to walk away disappointed, and I don't like that. So I like, it's just like I don't want to hear about the one coach with the one client that's bringing them to win, because they're going to walk away disappointed. They're going to go into a different show the following year, or luckily they do win. So now they just, you know, they're bragging about I brought the winner and the person won, and I'm like, oh, okay, but that's fine. But I really appreciate when people year after year their teams I see getting larger and more supportive of each other. So it's you know, being in Connecticut too, I will see like there's certain pockets of areas where you will get a lot of contestants, and then all of a sudden one of those contestants breaks away from their coach and then they become a coach. And I don't like to hear of any conflict, you know, like I don't like hearing that, you know, and where people are breaking away and starting their own teams and then there's like conflict. That shouldn't be at all, and nobody should chase anybody else's clients in that way. But that's why I always like first timers, because they're the people that don't know what to expect. They're the ones that really need guidance. You know, you can't, if you've taken somebody who already won a show and then they become your client and you're using them as a marketing thing to kind of push your team along and think that you're going to get all champions. It's, you didn't do all the work from the start to me. I like the people that start with people right from the very beginning. They don't know the first thing about it. You convince them, hey, you saw them in the gym. Have you ever thought of doing a show? And they're like, no, maybe, or people have told me about it. And then it's, you start with them and you get them into your first show. I think that is the hardest thing to do. And it takes the most, you know, knowledge for people to at least get them into their first show, and at least even into a transformation category, and to have them walk away with a positive experience. Because you could be great at finding first timers, but if you keep throwing them up there and then they never come back, you're like, oh,
Right.
you're giving them enough information about their body and about how this is more of a, you know, you want to put some time into this and you want to get people to make it part of their lifestyle and not see the negative stuff of it. And, you know, because I don't think there's a lot of negative stuff with this when you're doing it naturally and you're doing it slowly over time, and you're starting off with a transformation type of event, and you feel good about it. You know, that's how it was for me. I never had any of the negative stuff that other people say and that I hear, and I'm always fighting against that and going, you should have none of that should ever happen.
Right.
And
We like to walk away from that weekend saying, or at least our people feeling like, I can't wait to do the next show.
Yes,
Like if you don't walk away from the weekend and you don't need to know when it is, but you should walk away and be like, wow, that was like the coolest
Can't wait
thing,
to
right?
do that again.
I can't wait to do that again. And you don't necessarily need to say in 6 weeks I'm going to jump in. More like it was such a positive experience that you want to do it again, whether it's in a year or in two. But it shouldn't be like, I never want to do that again. Like that was so bad. You know, you shouldn't walk
Or
away.
you're angry or frustrated or
Right.
anything like that.
It's very hurtful to me, and not that I want to tell people it's hurtful because I don't want more people to, to say negative things. But you could tell by their posts sometimes when somebody will be in a show and then they'll wait a couple days and then they'll write something and they think it's really heartfelt and they're like, you know, they'll try to twist the positive, but you're reading into the negative. You're like, I'm not that happy with how I placed, but I da 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 da. They're saying other things about it
Right.
that are sort of positive, but they're letting it be known I am not happy with how I did, and other people said I should have did better. It's like, okay, like we are strict on criteria. We spend so many, with a whole prelims. I love having prelims, and I think it's important, even though it doesn't add, like, it makes the show more expensive for me to have a time with prelims to do all of the scoring in the afternoon where you can take your time, where it's not like a live scoring and you just have to kind of like rush through it. So it is nice, but sometimes you look at it, it's not like back, years ago, and you had 150, 208 contestants, and it's taken forever, and you have to do that. But so as shows get smaller, it's not necessary to have a prelims when your shows are small. But I still like having a prelims because you can get all the scoring and judging out of the way, and you can focus on making that night show for the audience.
Right.
And there's no stopping with like moving people around, having second looks, any of that stuff. You just move on right by it, and you really make it a spectacle, So, but we're so good at it, We don't wait to the last minute to pick our judges. We are so far in advance, a year in advance of picking our judges and going through the criteria of every point of that division and scoring it and taking our time to tabulate all of the scores by every single round, that I don't feel like there is any kind of guessing or any kind of, you know, picking between two people where you have a hard decision. Like it is just it's crystal clear. It's done, and it's nobody should walk away just thinking that they should have placed differently, and just but you can't do anything about that. So
Right.
people are going to think a certain way. There's not much you can do, but it is
Right.
upsetting because everything else does matter. People don't think like that is not the only, everything else matters so much to the red carpet, to the photos you get, to your backstage photos, to your stage photos, to your video clips, to everything else that you can walk away with that can show what your body looked like. And that whole marketability aspect is just really huge to me. It's always been, because understanding this industry and people trying to find cover models, like who would be on the cover, is important. Like, and trying to find ways that people can then take this material and market themselves as a coach, as a personal trainer, as something else within fitness, or even myself. I mean, I started off as a contestant and you turned into a promoter, but it was just kind of given to me because I really enjoyed it. So it was, but along the way, I look at all those things, and it's for anybody that's into any kind of influencer type of stuff. This is what you'd like to show because you do look like a rock star. You're at Mohegan Sun on the stage. You'll never have another chance in your life to be on a stage at Mohegan Sun than like in this show at this venue, because you can go
Absolutely.
other places. It's
And
not the
with
same.
a little more than 60 days to go, like what can people expect from Fitness Atlantic this year?
In comparison to last year, um, well, it's I like being in the same venue year after year, and there's what's nice is the last 2 years have been really good. Actually, every year it's been slightly better because the light programming every year it gets a little bit more gets added, and some new songs get added, and new lights to the finals get added. Um, but it's just fine tuning each thing, from the red carpet. Like 2 years ago, we had the 360 guy there, and he was messed it up. He showed up late and stuff. And then last year, it's like, no,
You
no,
were
no.
there.
That was so cool last year, though.
Last year was great, right? We just fine tuned everything that's done. Last year, I thought the lights looked fantastic around the screen, because if you notice, the year before they were LED lights and they were sporadic around, and last year it was tubes. So these tubes went around the big screen, and the stage looked that much more cleaner and professional. So I'm hoping to have a production meeting and get more of those tubes on the sides as well, just to kind of make that look a little better. Last year was the first year we had the smoke things that came up as the people won. So I got to make sure they put those back on the stage again. So just getting there and making sure that all these little details would be done. And just focus, trying to fix little things like the backstage photography, and we're looking for a different photographer. Dennis Cruz is back doing the photos this year, so he'll be there. Just trying to do different things like that, things I could bring for the contestants.
And where do you see like the future of it? Like over the next 3 to 5 years, do you think, almost like what we were talking about before, do you think that the competition stage continues to evolve in the same direction that social media is evolving, or do you think that, because before I finish, because I agree with what you're saying. Like if you're never going to step on stage at Mohegan Sun and be center stage under the lights, looking the way you look, other than that moment. So I agree with that 100%. But do you think that the shows themselves evolve in a different direction, or do you think that they remain pure, I would say, to what it is and what it should be, and they stay true to that?
I think they have to evolve over time. I think you have no choice. If you look back, I love the history of my show and trying to be like nostalgic. So my website is a monster of pages. But if you look back to 1999, it was like pretty much all bodybuilding. And then each year you'd see more and more girls with the fitness. And we were pretty much the first year, the first show to really launch bikini. When we did, we only had 2 bikini contestants in it, and then it just grew, and eventually we're getting hundreds of girls, into the show. But over time, I think it's going to change in 2 ways. I still think people aren't ready for transformation, because I thought I'd have more teams involved in that, meaning like gym franchises that wanted to put people up for legit before and afters. Because when you look at what we're doing for a transformation show, it's just as good as a Biggest Loser finale. Like the production level of what you can do, like for what we did with the kickboxing franchise, I thought more franchises would be involved at this point, where they'd be like, we want to get our team there with our logo on the stage, and we want to show these type of before and afters of our clients as a business, because it works great for everyone. So I've been doing it for a few years, for a while now, and I just thought that more people would see it by now and it would grow. So I don't know what exactly I need to do to take that to the next level, because I would love to blow up this transformation thing as big as it can go. So on that side, I think that's my thing. I think as far as the WBFF goes, I think you're going to see more beauty and wellness than ever. I think that is going to be more of it going into the future, like connections with that between clothing and makeup and areas that's going to kind of go in that more of a, I wouldn't say a pageant direction, but it would definitely like more modeling and beauty wellness things, more so than a bodybuilding direction.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think back to the first timer, the person that runs into an ad or sees a post, like what do you wish they walked away from that ad with? Like if they're reading it, like what do you really think? Because a lot of times when I write an ad or put out a piece, it's like you didn't get it. Like so what would you wish they actually got from that?
Yeah, I don't know if sometimes it has to be more, and I think about that with my Instagram too, right? So I post on Instagram and I don't get a lot of response, or it's the same people looking at stuff. And I'm like, well, it'd be nice if I had features of people that were in the show, kind of giving a little bit more tips or things like that that would draw more people in, because a lot of people won't think it's for them. You know, that there's a lot of people that would look at it and think, well, I'll never look like that, or I can never get on that stage, or those things can't happen for them. So it could be a slew of things that come up that make it, I mean, that would stop them from, because I just can't imagine people like pursuing going out and on their own finding a coach without having a little bit of introduction at some point to feel comfortable for their first one. It's always been for me a former contestant that tells a friend, hey, I think you would be great at this. So I think there's so much with referral that comes from this type of thing, more so than people seeing it and thinking like, I don't know what would call to action somebody to see a picture, see a flyer, and go, I want to do that. Like I don't think there's a lot of it. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I think more of it comes from someone else telling someone, I did it, you can do it too. And then either referring them to their coach or coaching them themselves and walking them through the steps.
I agree. I agree. And, like that's exactly how we ended up
I
there.
was gonna say that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah, like there was someone that we knew, and
I
she
saw the picture and I
she
was
saw
like,
a
I want to
picture.
do that.
Right. And that's
But then since then, everyone that we've taken to the stage, it has been us being like, you'd be really good at this, right? Because this is what we do, because I did it, because it's what he coaches.
Right.
So it's a combination of what you're saying for sure. For sure.
But go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, but we're so excited.
Yeah,
for
we are definitely
Mohegan
looking forward
Sun
to it.
Fitness
You know,
Atlantic.
I think if you're watching this or if you're listening to this and you're thinking about it and you're unsure, at the very least, you should come and watch the show
Yes.
and come experience it in person, so that you could walk away from that show kind of like feeling what we've said, which is, I want to get on that stage. You know, next year that'll be me. You know, that's always a good take. We always invite people to come watch the show also, so that they could see
Yes.
exactly what we're talking about.
And feel the energy and really experience
And
it.
feel the energy. So in 60 days, well, in 58 days, we start our drive because, you know, we don't fly. We look forward
We
to
make
that.
a trip out of it. We have
Yeah.
our favorite places to go eat around Connecticut and
Absolutely.
Wegmans. I need to go to Wegmans. Oh my goodness, we're excited. We make a whole thing of it.
So we are excited to be back at Fitness Atlantic this year at Mohegan Sun. And as always, Brian, thank you for being on the show. I know that if anybody's watching and listening to this, there is always a lot of useful information for first-time competitors, for current competitors, and for future competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again, Brian. Till next time, for you guys listening and watching, please like, share, comment, subscribe, leave questions. I will
Yes.
send them to Brian so that he could answer them. And you could follow Brian all over social media. You could go to fitnessatlantic.com, right?
Yep.
And I will link that in the show notes so that everybody has access to that. And there's a free report that they could download. And you get all the details and all the information. And like he said, all of that will go right into your inbox. And you can ask and have answers to all of your questions. So thank you again, Brian.
Thank you.